Hello. Hello, Andreas. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Great. Great.
Good morning.
Hello, Michael. Good
Hello.
morning.
All right, you can hear me. That's great. You have a full lineup today. 2 hours, is that right?
Yes, yes, yes.
All right. I was speaking with a colleague yesterday, and he said he was from the area that y'all are hosting. So he was excited about it. I'm not sure if he'd be able to join. He might still be asleep, but I definitely shared the link with colleagues so they could watch it when they wake up.
Yeah, that is true. That's why recording has been done. But also there is a problem with the timings as well, right? So few people are cannot we cannot all of them cannot join at the same time. So
Yeah, yeah. I saw in Slack there was another user group, and I think they posted they were about to start, and it was midnight my time. Like, I'm not sure what's better, to have joined at midnight or you know,
Hmm.
six in the morning. But
To,
I
to,
guess that's largely what, like when there's an MVP lunch, uh, a lot of times they'll have it during times where like people are ready to go to bed or they're already asleep and they have to get up early to join because the various time zones.
To be honest, the last time I've spoken at the Sitecore user group LA, and this
Oh wow.
because of the time lapse, it was at 2 o'clock in the
Oh
morning
goodness.
for me. So this
Yeah.
was quite hard.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah. One time I presented at that user group and I had just gotten this Yeti microphone. And so I'm excited about it. And there's a mute button on the front of it. And so I thought, oh, well, if I just push that button and it flashes, then it's muted. Well, lo and behold, I don't know if it was Zoom or I don't think it was Zoom. I think it was Google Hangouts at the time. And so my wife comes in the room, and the dog's in the room, and they're barking. The dog's barking, and the wife's talking to me, and I overhear the other presenters say, "Hey, can you mute? There's something going on in the background." And I was so mortified. I was so embarrassed that like for everything we were talking about, you could just like hear in the recording. I thought, oh, silly. Now I think now Zoom and Teams has gotten really good with audio suppression, and so things that are in the background you just don't hear anymore. But at that time, it's like it could pick up everything. You know, if there was a mosquito in the room, it could hear it.
Yeah, that's true.
Hi Andrew, hi Michael. Good morning.
Hey, good
Where,
morning.
where are you from, Michael?
And
From which region?
Yeah, so I'm in Texas,
Okay.
Dallas, Texas. Yeah, so I'm smack dab in the middle, the U.S. Central Time Zone. So it's 6:30 a.m. here, which is not too bad. I've got a little 5-year-old, and she would wake up about this time anyways. But I had this thing where if I'm going to present, I can't sleep, and I'll like fall asleep, wake up, look at the clock, and it's like constantly checking the time. And so I think I check the time at 2 and 3 and 3:30 and 4, and so I'll probably be taking a nap today. Yeah, but you may have heard Texas had a heat wave. I think we had like something like over 45 days this year where the temperature was over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is what is that like almost 38? Yeah, over 38 Celsius is usually we're getting. It'll be like 108, 110. So it'd be like 37, 38 Celsius. And yeah, that was hard for the summer. So it's starting to cool down. We're happy about it. All of our plants are dying.
Well, all up to 90 degree Fahrenheit is so, let's say, okayish. But
Yeah,
over that, it's getting really hot.
unbearable. Yeah, yeah, it's no fun. And we had just had some landscaping done in our front yard. We had uh, my wife bartered, and so we're like, yeah, let's get a bunch of stuff done to the house. And they redo the paved sidewalk, and they put some plants, and we got a tree. And then this heat wave come, and you just see all the plants just start withering away. And it's like, oh, good grief. Um, and then we had a hailstorm. I'm not sure what kind of storms you get where you're at, but Texas, we get a lot of hail, which, like ice falling from the sky and beating everything to death. So we got hail dents all over our cars and on our roof and the fence and the gutters, like everything, you know, uh, on our premises was like beat up. And so we got the roof replaced. We're getting the fence fixed, and just the list goes on and on. And I'm thankful that that's getting behind us now.
Yeah, such extreme weather conditions getting more and more
Common.
the from each year to another. getting
Yeah,
more of these extreme situations.
extreme temperatures and just lots of rain. And so we a couple years ago there was a freeze that was affecting Texas, and they basically there were power outages everywhere. It was really terrible, and we had a pipe burst, and it flooded the first floor of our house, and it was like an inch of water. And so I bought a generator and got it hooked up to the house. I'm ready. We had a power outage. I'm going outside, firing up the generator, and then my daughter's going to watch cartoons while everybody else has a power outage.
So, but the next big Sitecore event is is near to you in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
So not far to traveling for you.
Yeah, not too bad actually. Probably 2-3 hours. one year was at was in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I'm like driving distance. I'm about 7 hours from where it was at, but it was like a 45-minute flight.
Okay.
And so I went there 2 years in a row because Sitecore North America, SUGHYD North America was there in 2015, and then the very next year Sitecore hosted symposium there. And then there was another year they had it in Florida, and they did it 2 years in a row in Florida. I think that was Sitecore came up with there was some sort of contract they probably couldn't get out of, and they had it twice. And so I'm excited that it's in Tennessee because I've never been to that state. And there's a lot of Tennessee's growing kind of like a new Hollywood alternative, so they're producing movies there. So it'd be kind of nice to go see like what that state's doing for movie production. So yeah. Do you think you'll be there?
I didn't know. Last year we were in Chicago. But to be honest, for us it's let's say getting harder and harder to sell the Sitecore stuff. So
Okay. Yeah.
can't predict if we are there or not. So I personally I hope so, because Nashville sounds to be very interesting, especially so country music and stuff.
Yeah. Just everything about it seems like it'd be a like new and interesting experience. I've recently started taking interest in guitar playing, and so maybe that will be further inspiration to keep practicing and get better.
Definitely. I started around about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And still have much fun.
Yeah, I bought my uncle gave me a guitar. It's a classical guitar. But I'm like just getting started out, and so I'm having to adjust to like holding the neck and finger placements, and my fingertips are just killing me. The calluses aren't there yet. But I bought my first guitar, and it comes in today. So today's a really good day. Giving a presentation, and then I go pick up a guitar. And I got
cool.
it's a Taylor brand, and it's a small guitar, like a travel size guitar. So my daughter can maybe play.
Okay.
So we'll see. Yeah. So I wanted something I could take with me, but also use it as a guitar that maybe my daughter would practice with. I didn't want to go buy a guitar just for her and it just sit on a shelf or sit on a little stand. So I wanted something that I could go to little family gatherings and, play around with. I also have a violin. I played that in like middle school and high school, and I broke it out yesterday and I tuned it up and I played Happy Birthday for my wife, and she's just shocked. She's like, "I've never seen you play. We've been together, 17 years, and I've never heard you pull out the violin and play it." So maybe this is a new season for me to, you know, have a stringed instrument hobby.
Yeah, from time to time I pick up one of my harmonicas.
Oh yeah, that would be
This,
that's a fun
but
one to learn.
this fits pretty much together with the guitar.
You'll be a one-man band pretty
Yeah,
soon, huh? You'll have the little harmonica on your shoulder and the
maybe in
guitar and
20
the
years.
drums. The drums. Yeah, that would be funny. It would make for an interesting symposium because there's some members in the community who've been known to sing and play instruments at
Yeah, I know
the
both of them
symposium.
pretty well.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Rodrigo and
Okay. Yeah.
Stefan Winter. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Stefan, I see and talk to him on a nearly weekly on the Sitecore
Oh, okay.
lunches. He's
Good
from
deal.
Germany.
Oh,
And
okay. Okay.
Rodrigo, yeah, let's say from time to time. So on the bigger
Yeah.
Sitecore events like the SUGHYD and the symposium and stuff, he's always there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think he's from Brazilian. So
Brazil. Yeah.
yeah,
I I want to say I was there the first time he introduced his singing. There was an event that I was a part of, and he was singing, and everyone was just like, "What?" And then from that year on, he was the Sitecore singer. Like he's on this. I think it was a year or two ago. He was on the stage with Paige. Um, I think at the time she was the chief marketing officer for Sitecore. So he's really created a brand for himself now, where he goes to these conferences and he's known to sing. I'm not there yet. I'm not really gifted with the singing, but maybe I'll get there with the guitar playing.
Michael, are we good to
Yes.
start now?
We are good. Yes.
Yeah, let me introduce then. Okay. Hello team, welcome to Sukhan Hyderabad. I'm Yamini. I've been working in Sitecore from past 10 years and I've received two MVP awards in the past 2 years. And now today's session we have Michael and Andreas. Michael, he has been a member of Sitecore community since 2013. He has been certified on 6.6 Sitecore. He received 9 MVP awards as of now and he started contributing to Sitecore PowerShell. And he lives in Dallas with his wife Rebecca, daughter Bella, and three dogs, Inky, Sassy, and Bubbles. So today he'll be sharing features he built for Sitecore PowerShell extension and with Sitecore XM. And Andreas is from Germany and he has more than 20 years of experience in IT. He started as a developer, he made it into team leader, project management, product owner, and also now as a partner management. Today he will be sharing insights on Sitecore CDP. So Michael, it's up. The stage is to you now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Let's see. Let me share my screen. Mm, Okay. All right. Can everyone see what's going on?
Yes.
yes,
All
yep.
right. Good deal. Well, thank you again for giving me an opportunity to present today. For those that have not presented before, I do encourage you to do so. There's lots of opportunities with user groups. And if you are seeking an MVP award, user groups are a great way to demonstrate to Sitecore that you are sharing with the community. It's not about how much you know, but it's about what you know and what you're willing to share. And yeah, let me know if you've got questions about Sitecore MVP and how you could become one too. If you are interested in getting in touch with me, I'm always on the Sitecore Slack community, as well as on Twitter. And I'm sure you could send me a postcard and we could be pen pals. I'd like to thank the GitHub sponsors who help help sponsor, contribute to SPE. Over the last couple of years, we've had various sponsors, and I do appreciate it. Gives me the funds to pay for Snagit and Camtasia, and then I can buy a drink on them. So today we're going to talk a little bit about just some helpful resources with SPE, in particular, Sitecore PowerShell extensions. I'll give an overview of a soon-to-be module that I've created. For now, we'll just call it the Security Access Overrides. It's a rules-based approach to overriding item security. I think you'll find it interesting. And then I'll talk a little bit about SPE Delegated Access. It's a similar kind of feature to the previous one that I spoke about. And you'll see how each have their own place within the Sitecore ecosystem. There's a documentation site for Sitecore PowerShell extensions, doc.sitecorepowershell.com. Recommend that you go there when you've got questions or an idea that you'd like to explore and you want to see how things are set up. And be sure to register with the Sitecore Stack Exchange. There's a tag for PowerShell extensions. So if you got questions, you can tag it as that. And there's a large community who follow those questions and would be able to give you examples fairly quickly. I also encourage you, when you register, to vote on questions and answers. Those that are asking the questions or answering the questions, they appreciate getting the points. All right, so security access overrides. I'm just going to briefly cover the things that are built and created to make this work together. And then I'll show some images of it and some source code to it and a little diagram to help you kind of capture like what is actually happening with this product. It's not yet turned into a module, but I hope to turn into a module that you could install or at least have source code available on GitHub so you can incorporate it into your solution. So you have security items. This is for the purpose of configuring what kind of security rules you want to apply. So there's a rules context folder. So if you not work with rules, like creating your own rules and the tags associated with that, I still struggle with it. It still feels very complicated, even though there's not a lot of steps to it. It just doesn't feel as intuitive as it could be. But it's essentially there's an item in the tree, and this gets associated with the rules path on the template item. So this rules context item will have some configuration for it. This configuration is needed for, let's say you want to only show item hierarchy rules in the rules editor. This is how you would configure it. And then we have a security rule and security rule folder template. This is completely custom. So the rules context folder exists out of the box. Rules, security rule and security rule folder. These are ones that I've created to leverage the rules context item. And this is going to have the various configurations that you would want when applying this custom access. We also have code associated with it, a security rule manager. This is going to connect the security rule item that you've created with the access rule class that exists in the Sitecore kernel or whichever library it's in. So effectively, the security rule manager runs and it checks, hey, is there a security rule configured? If there is, let's override the access that was configured on the item. We'll see a little bit more of that here soon. We've got a security rule authorization helper. the authorization, I can't remember, it's maybe called like item authorization helper. There is an existing class in the Sitecore library, and this inherits from that, and it overrides some of the methods that are there. So it's going to call the security rule manager that we've created, and if there is no rule configured, it falls back to the default implementation. We also have a security rule authorization provider. This would inherit from the bucket authorization provider, and it's where the helper class is used. You may have seen articles in the past where someone has overridden the bucket authorization provider. Let's say, for example, they want a custom rule setting. So, you go in the little access rules configuration, they got a little boxes, the check, I think it's a check and an X for inheritance. You could create like a whole new entry in there where like, oh, I want to give someone only access to a specific version, so you could really go crazy with the rules. So following kind of all of the different examples that were provided, I say, hey, well, why don't I use that same sort of approach, but allow someone to configure rules, security for an item through a rules approach. And then finally, we've got a security rule monitor to purge the access results cache. So if you may have performance issues if you have large bodies of content being pulled from your site. What happens is every time an item is loaded, the security field on the item is parsed, and that data is stuffed into cache. So if you disable the cache, well, then it's always having to parse it. So you really need to disable the security. So if you have a brochure site, maybe you disable the security on the site so it doesn't have to do anything with this. So in our case, if we're overriding what's getting stored in the cache, we need a way to clear it out. And then a patch configuration to bring all this together. All right. So I'm not an expert at Visio, and so please excuse my child diagram. But what we have here is just a really simple flow from the time that the item is loaded to its placed in the cache. So you start up Sitecore, maybe you click on an item. So maybe you're a content editor and you click on an item in the tree. This item has not yet been loaded. So Sitecore is going to load the item. It's going to go through its various caches to get that item, maybe with the database, maybe the data cache, the item cache, whatever. Then because of this security provider that we built, we are able to say, what item are you looking at? And let's go look up to see if there's a configuration that matches this particular item. And we'll see in a moment how that decision is made. We parse the rules on the security item if it exists, or we parse the rules field off of the item itself if there is no configuration that matches. Then we'll log that decision. So you'll see in the log file that it was overridden. And then the item security gets stuffed into the access result cache. So if you took out the text security rules and the parse and the log decision, Sitecore just loads the item, parses the security field. If there is something, then it uses that and puts it in the cache. So we're just intercepting that request and then doing something meaningful with it. All right. So what does this look like in the Sitecore tree? You may feel different about how it was organized, but this is where I landed. We have SXA installed, so tried to follow some of the conventions that were there. So here we have the rules context folder that I spoke about earlier. And then this is the custom security rule folder and the associated items, security rule items that are configured for the site. So some of these are specific to our SXA implementation, where I want to give access to items in the tree, but I don't want to have to deploy those items with the security associated. And then the upload media, that's a more interesting one to look at. So when you select on one of the security rules, you get just a few fields. One field is, should this be enabled or not? You may notice that I'm using the Sitecore Author Toolbox extension, so the styling's a little bit different than what you might get out of the box. So we enable it or disable it. This enable disable is linked to the events that we have. So when you enable it, disable it, and you hit save, there's a save event that gets fired, and we'll look at the code on how that is, how that operates. And that's where the purging of the cache takes place. We have a rules field. Okay, so there's an access rules field. And when you edit the rules, you can create multiple conditions. So each of these search queries, item queries, scopes, and redirects, these correlate with particular folders in the tree with an SXA implementation. So there's a search query folder, query item queries folder, scopes folder, and redirects maps. So these are going to apply to items in the tree where potentially a content author would create an item. I don't want them to be able to delete this item. So we would have security on those folders so they can't delete it, right? That would probably take down the site or something would break. You just want them to manage the children of that. So if any one of these conditions returns true, so it's really an or matching taking place, conditional or. So we'll say, hey, is this one match? Does this one, or this one? If they all return false, well, then it falls back to the default security. If you match one of them, then it bails out and applies the access rights. So this is a security field. It's the data, the equivalent of what would be on an item in the security field, but it's on my custom item, and the purpose is for configuration. So this it's not surfaced like a standard field. So you only see the security field on an item if you view the standard fields. This is just a template field that I've added, and so it's there kind of in the default view. So just like you would manage security on an item, it has those little checkboxes and little X's. And when this rule is applied, so the search queries returns true, the access rights completely replace what is on the item, if there is anything. So what that would mean is if that item already had access and you wish to retain that access, you should copy those security settings here as well. So it's like a complete swap. I found that to be the better approach than like having to add another checkbox that says, do you want to merge or do you want to override? Why go through that trouble? Just completely replace it and move on. So this is similar as the previous rule. This particular one is for the upload dialog. Okay, so here's the dilemma that we had. We want users to be able to attach media, like content authors. Attach, detach, they want to be able to swap out the picture with the same item. They didn't want to have to upload a brand new item and then go replace it. They just say, hey, we fixed this picture. Maybe it was blurry, the wrong typeface, whatever. There's a new branding standard. We just want to replace this one image and publish it. Well, if you give a user just regular authoring access, they don't have the access to do the detach and attach feature. So this upload item exists in the content tree in the core database, And if I grant access to that role, then they don't need to be in an elevated role to do it. So I'm essentially saying, well, if you're in this custom role I've created, you have access to do it. I don't need to add you into these other roles that aren't appropriate for your position. So here's what it would look like out of the box. The everyone role has deny, and the Sitecore client maintaining has read access. Well, that's not enough for content author. So by implementing this security feature, you can now produce this without actually editing the security on the upload item in the core database. So what you see here is the effective access, but it's not the access on that item. If we went and looked at that field, you would only see the everyone and the client maintaining in the field of the security field. But when Sitecore, basically when they rendered this view, it's pulling the data that was coming from the access results cache, and that's what I've swapped out with my data. So hopefully you're still following along with it. So the benefits that we get with this, there's no need to modify out-of-the-box items with custom security changes. So I just showed you the upload item. I didn't need to modify that. SXA, JSS, a lot of these modules, they have a lot of items in the tree, and I may want to change the access to those items, or they may be generated as part of the tenant. I don't want to have to just always go modify those items for it to work. If you're deploying those items, then you may have to change it in production and then go edit locally and then include in source control and deploy it. And then, it's just a headache. This is a much more convenient way to do it. And if you did want to continue with the process of applying the security in development and have that included as part of your deployment, then this is a way to not have to modify the item directly. You would just create the configuration for that temporary purpose. And once you get the deployment completed, then you could back this out. And you've not altered any items. For those that have worked with IAR, you'll know that the security would be baked into the IAR item. And if you modify it in the content tree, you essentially create a database version of it. Well, that may be less desirable. And so this is I think, a better use. Future plans would turn it into a module. I suppose either just making the code available would be the bare minimum, because I think people would want to incorporate it in their solution. But then you've got the items. So then the question is, well, what do you do with items? So I turn into a Sitecore package module. Then yeah, you could install it. But what if you've overridden the bucketing, the bucket authorization provider? So now there's a conflict here because my implementation doesn't incorporate whatever customizations you made. So there's just lots of things to think about. But I thought I would show a little bit of source code before I jump on to the next piece. If there's any questions, just let me know. I don't think I see any questions. Let's see. Yep, I don't see any questions yet. All right, so I mentioned there were several things going on. We'll start at the simple part. So there's the patch configuration, which is going to include a provider that is the security rule authorization provider. So we're effectively swapping out what was used by the bucket authorization provider with my implementation. And then we have events configured. These are important because if I save an item anywhere in the tree, but in particular the security rule items, then I want those to take effect. Like whatever the setting was, if I disable it, I want it to apply right away. If something's deleted, then it's got to get purged, right? We don't want the custom security to be in the access result cache if someone is deleting one of the security configurations. If a role, so any event related to the roles and to the users. So this would include like adding people into a particular role, or creating users, right? So there's kind of all these little things that, oh, well, in this edge case, if we don't purge the cache, then this one user won't have the access until the cache is purged. So events that are associated with that. All right, so then we go to the helper class. The helper's really trivial. We're overriding the get access rules method that's going to call my security rule manager class. It's got a static method, get security rules. So given an item, go see if there's security rules configured with a rules engine rule that matches a condition that applies to this item. If it doesn't, fall back to the base implementation, which is just go look on the field. And if there's nothing on the field, then you move on. Okay, so not a whole lot, but necessary for this to work. And then we've got the provider, another sort of simple, trivial implementation. Inherit from the bucket authorization provider. It has a corresponding configuration in the patch that we looked at a moment ago. Then we override the item authorization helper with a new custom one that we just looked at. And you pass in, all the dependency injection requirements. And so now we'll have our code tapped into Sitecore. So when Sitecore is running, trying to figure out access, it's going to run through our code first. For the rules monitor, so the events that we looked at a moment ago, you'll see that I have an on item saved. There's deleting, created, reference, updated, so on. So there's a lot of little combinations to think about. Essentially what it does is first check to see if the event disabler is active. So if you've ever written code where you've, how would I say it? You've wrapped your code in a security disabler, or maybe the bulk, things like a bulk contexts class. There's like a handful of them that you can run. There's a user switcher. There's just events disabler. So there's several of these implementations that you put in a using block, and whatever code runs in the using block sort of trips this flag. And in this case, if you're using the event disabler class, then the is active would be true. And when the using statement exits, then it goes back to false. So if, for example, you wrote a PowerShell script and it was going to change a ton of content, you would probably use the event disabler so that you don't queue up a bunch of content changes. Like maybe that's not what you're intending to do. Maybe you intend to like recrawl the content anyways as part of your deployment. So you make a bunch of content changes, you use an event disabler so you don't queue up a bunch of content changes. When everything's done, the event queue isn't full of stuff, and then you just go recrawl your content, right? So in that kind of scenario, this event disabler would be active. So we want to return on all these methods, we want to skip out. But in case you don't do that, then we're going to extract, in a case of like an item saved, you extract a parameter from the event, which would contain the item. There are certain events that have this and other events that don't. Some event signatures have more than one object to look at, and some don't. So in the case of an on item saved event, you would get an item from the event, and then we want to check to see if it's monitored, if this is the thing I care about. So what do I care about? I care about if the item's not null. I care about if the item is the security rule template that I've created. And and the security rules root is, so it basically matches the security rule root. So once again, what we care about is that it's our item for the security rules in a certain part of the tree. And if it's not, then we want to bail out as quick as possible. So you want, if you, just in Sitecore general, if you are writing custom event code, you want to bail out as quick as possible, because this cascades across the whole site for all the users. So every time something's happening, every time there's a save event, that all the users may experience this code running. So if you put something in here that takes 5 seconds, then everyone's going to experience the 5-second delay. So we're going to look to see if it's monitored, and if it is, then we invalidate the cache. So the invalidate cache in the security rule manager just purges everything that was in the tree that we looked at, and then we clear the access results cache. Okay, so why such an aggressive approach? We could spend a lot of time trying to find the right items that match, but we have to consider the tree structure. We have to like maybe even walk up the tree. So we could spend a lot more processing time trying to purge the right ones, or just purge everything and move on. Now, this is in the content authoring environment, right? We're not dealing with content delivery. So the people who are impacted are the content editors, content authors. And I assume you're not changing these items often. So it's a low risk, I think, here. Perhaps in a large scale environment, you may want to be less aggressive, but it has worked fine for us. And we've been using this feature for at least 6 months. I think I've had this in production for 6 months. Yeah. So then finally, we look at the meat and potatoes of this code, the security rule manager class. So we're going to get the rules that are configured in the tree that we saw earlier. And so every time there's a purge event that takes place, well, then this would reload. When I was describing the event disabler, well, there's a scenario where you may want to use the security disabler. So why use the security disabler in here? Well, this code is written for the purpose of determining what the security is. So I needed to disable the security disabler so that I'm not considering any item security, any security in the content tree. I just want to go get these items without concern for the security on the items. Just go get them. And then later on, when it's detecting what kind of access to apply to this said item, then that's where it handles my code and parses and all that jazz. So if I didn't do the security disabler, then when I query the items, it would try to get the security on the item. So it's sort of self-defeating kind of scenario. I guess this is where I say, just trust me, it worked. So then we want to cache these entries. And so we create, effectively, we create an in-memory cache here, concurrent dictionary, so that we can keep track of the things we look up. So once again, we're trying to limit what performance impact there is on the content authors. And so you want to cache as often as you can, but also have a reliable mechanism for clearing the cache. If you've never worked with the rules field before and like evaluating whether rules are true or false, there's a rule context object you can create, and you can there's some parameters on here. So one property is the current item, and so when the rule is evaluated, it will look at this current item to determine, whether it's true or false. And some of this code we have implemented in SPE, and so I kind of already knew how to work with it. So we're going to get the security item. So the security rule item that's in the tree, we're going to get the rules that are configured on there. And then we're going to evaluate the rule. And if any of the rules are basically, if any of the rules are true, then it's going to do this. It's going to continue on. If none of them are true, then it's going to say, hey, this particular item doesn't have anything configured. So we're going to cache that there's nothing configured so that it can see that there's nothing configured in the future. So I don't want to have to keep running the rules every single time. I want to create a placeholder for the fact that it had run before. If there is a rule that evaluates the true, then we're going to deserialize the rule that's on the custom security rule item. We're going to establish that security has been overridden. Here are the access rights that are configured on that item, and then we're going to cache that. And so ultimately, in that provider, we're going to call the security rule and return the collection. So it's a collection because you could have several rules configured on that item for multiple roles, right? So you can have one for editor role, one for designer role. So that makes it a collection of access rules. And that's ultimately what is returned to the provider, and that gets stuffed into the access result cache. So in summary, what this module is doing is it's tapping in to how Sitecore determines access on an item, and then it intercepts the request for what access is on that item. If we've configured something, it uses that. If it doesn't, it falls back to the default implementation. Sitecore still manages adding things to the access result cache, and I'm still using Sitecore's API to clear the access result cache. So we're not modifying everything. We're just plugging in using Sitecore's pluggable architecture. All right, so moving on. A similar feature. So what happened was I was interested in how do I grant access to scripts? Like, how do I let someone run a script elevated without hard coding the elevation in the script? And that's how I came up with the idea of the previous topic of security rule overrides. It's like, oh, well, there's got to be a way to do that also for just regular Sitecore items and not be dependent on SPE, right? Like if I just want to click on an item and have security overridden, surely there's got to be a way to do it. So I worked on SPE Delegated Access, and then that's what got me to work on that other piece. So this will be a little bit faster topic, and I think everyone will be excited to use this one as well right away. So once upon a time, I had this idea for elevated access, elevated unlock. User, content author is going on vacation. They're going to Germany. They're going to be gone a month. Well, now someone's still stuck in the office and they are having to find an admin to unlock items. Like, well, that's really inconvenient. And really, the manager is still in town. They're still working. They get these requests to unlock an item. I just had an idea, by the way. So they maybe you have a content editor warning where you can click the link and it sends a message to the manager to, hey, I need this unlocked. So whatever that might look like to you, this item's still locked and I can't make changes to it. So I created the elevated unlock script, which would give you a what is it? A gutter button. So if you're familiar with the bar on the far left of the content tree, you can add these little icons. Those are little gutter icons. Also, you can create a content editor warning. So it's the banner that appears above the quick info section. And then also like a ribbon button. So I wanted all these different ways of convenience to enable someone to unlock an item. But the default implementation I had had the impersonation, if you will, take place in the script. So it would run a security switcher, go unlock the item, and then the security switcher would exit, much like what I was describing earlier with event disabler, and then you move on. Well, I don't think that's a really good approach because the user's hard coded in there, and some implementations may decide they don't want to have the admin role used everywhere. They want to create a special role that's used in situations like this, so that if they had to disable it for some reason, the admin, like true admins, still exists. And so, ergo, we have this similar feature as we saw previously called delegated access. Delegated access, you create a configuration item. This item has also an enable disable feature. But this is a slightly different approach. So you have a role that you expect the user to be a member of. So requires membership in a given role. And then you impersonate the user. Now, the reason why we're impersonating is because when scripts run, they either run as the current user or we have to override it with a different user. So think of like a scheduled task. When you configure a scheduled task in Sitecore, that runs as a special user, and it has access to do whatever. So if you've created if you've coded a task and deployed it, and then you configure the task in Sitecore to run that code, it can do whatever it wants, and that can pose certain risks and challenges. But in this case, if we're talking about like a ribbon button, it's not running as a scheduled task. It's effectively a job that spins off. Well, that job would run as the current user. Well, if the current user doesn't have access to do this task, then it will fail. And so if you were to install SPE 6.4 and you didn't configure anything for the elevated unlock, you could have the elevated unlock button, but when you click it, if you're not an admin, it doesn't do anything, because I've actually taken out the impersonation code. So what you have to do is configure this item, and as you can see on the right, there are scripts in the tree that are configured to be elevated. So the 3 elevated unlock scripts here are the ribbon button, the gutter, and the content editor warning link. There's a link in there, and we'll see that here in a moment. And then the unlock item script also needs to be elevated. And when all of that is configured, when you click those buttons or links, then and you're a member of Elevated Unlock, then it will run as admin. Right. Okay, so that's a lot. So broken down again with my child diagram, user runs a script. It detects if delegated access is configured. Now, if you're an admin, then this doesn't matter. But if you are not an admin, then this is where it would really matter. So is this item that you're trying to run, the script, is it configured to run as an impersonated user? Well, if the item configuration is there and the rules evaluate to true, then yes. Not, then it runs the script as the current logged in user, logs that decision, and completes the script. So let's check out a demo. And looks like I've got just a couple minutes before our distinguished colleague presents. So, okay, good. I have Docker running locally. Just crossing my fingers it wouldn't bail out on me. Okay, so this is a clean vanilla instance. And I'm just waiting for the menu. Yep. And yeah, let me, so this particular Docker instance I have running, I have a repository on GitHub that allows you to test out like your Sitecore changes. So let's say you created a custom module, a custom package, you just want to spin up a vanilla instance. It's a repo dedicated for that purpose, and I actually use it when I'm developing SPE and I generate packages for the next version. I dump it into a folder, I spin it up. I have a PowerShell script that a PowerShell script that detects if there's packages. It does some conversions of the packaging into the Sitecore web deploy packages, and uses all these different compose files, so you could do different combinations. So that's what I'm leveraging for this particular thing. So if we go into the content tree, this delegated access exists. You would essentially create a new delegated access item. And this is where I would say I want to enable it, call it elevated unlock. Okay, so this is all built with SPE dialogues. So if you've not worked with that, check out the docs. It's using the read variable command. And essentially you can, through a script, you can put all these little options here, and then the script will go create the item and fill in all these fields as such. So what's the elevated role? So I could say Sitecore author, and then the impersonated user. So you just pick the user from the tree. So let's say this one here. And then what script do you want to run Elevate in? So I would assume you would organize the script library where you have your own module for your organization that would help with serialization. And then you would just skip through to what you want. Now, one key thing to remember here is if you didn't do this, the only way I think that you could have the elevated unlock would be if you gave the user the local administrative role. The local administrative role is terrible to give to users because it lets them go modify template fields. And that's a bad idea. So I've been using this delegated access to pull back this elevated privileges, the set of elevated privileges that I had been giving users just so they could use these features. So I would say between this delegated access and the previous thing I demoed, if you had both of those running in your environment, you would have zero reason, I think, to give any user an admin role. And I'm sure those that are watching are just feeling the pain. They know what suffering there is with having users given admin access. So I believe everything that I've done so far has created a path for you to pull that access back. Say, you don't need admin access. I have a way to control those scenarios through either scripts or overriding security on items so that you don't need to be in those roles. Yeah, so we're going to go into, I think it's security management. Is that it? No, that's not it. It's one of these. Maybe this one. Here we go. Okay, so you see that in the integrations, I've created a gutter. I've created a ribbon button. And I've created the warning. There's also this script that gets run. Okay, so if I go and enable, I think I have to run the integrations for it to appear. So just something to think about is anytime you have a brand new instance of SPE installed, there are integration points. These are things in script modules and like ribbon and gutter and so forth. You have to run this process. So if you're creating custom ones, you can either run this from the toolbox or from the ISE. And so now you can see elevated unlock appears. And then let's go to content tree. So we're going to edit this item. Now here's the interesting scenario. You'll notice that I don't actually see any message here. And that's because I'm not I'm an admin and I already have access to that. So a feature that you may not be too familiar with is on your scripts, you want to leverage the security, the rules field. So there's this interactive. So you can see on this script, I check to see is the user an administrator and it's locked, and it's not locked by me. So I'm an admin and is not locked by me. So if I go and create a new user, let's see. How are we doing on time? B, and we'll add in the author role. Nope. Nope. Okay. So if I go to this item here, just to, so I don't have to log in and log out, if we view the standard fields, we go to security and I change this to test. Okay. And I think it's okay. So this is locked by test. So what would happen is that if I'm logged in as another user, this is owned by test, then the security warning would appear. But also, you got to consider the fact that I am an administrator, and so it may not make sense for me to see the log. But then you see there's another rule for local administrators, and that was something that I had put in place and was giving users that access. So the thing that's now more interesting, the delegated access, I've created delegated access rule. And when this rule gets evaluated, it runs all the SPE code to see if you have access to this item. So if you leverage delegated access and you create rules on your items to enable such feature, then when this rule is evaluated, then it's going to activate the code, and then whatever you expect to happen happens, right? And so the same is going to be true for here, for the ribbon and for the warning, the content editor warning. So the content editor warning says where the current user is administrator and where the item is locked and where the item is locked by me. So I would encourage you to explore this feature and see how it can kind of replace some of the maybe lesser recommended practices that we've done in the past. Now, not only are these scripts run as the elevated user, the impersonated user, when you run reports, let's go run, let's see, items last updated. So maybe that would be a convenient one. Oh, let's do, that's probably not a good report because I don't have any contents. Actually, let me create a new item. Okay, so if I run the report again, see items last updated. Let's see after the second. Okay, so we've got these two items. You'll see that the report was generated by my user. So if I were to change the impersonation for this specific report, so if I created a configuration item for this report, then it would run it as the impersonated user. Okay, so why would that matter? Well, what if the report you've created requires admin access to see those items, but you want to make that report, the contents of the report, visible to someone that's not an admin? Then you can have the report run as an admin, but the report itself is visible to non-admins, right? So if you come, if we go look at any of the reports, like this one here, let's see, there's no security on this. I think it's at a higher level. Yeah. So when you create reports at the report item, you can restrict it to certain users. Well, what if I created a report that I didn't want to restrict sort of visibility to lower privileged users, but it requires elevated security access to go see those items. Maybe it's a special access that you only want a power user to have, right? So all these kind of things, these scenarios that you can have working out, we've now provided a way to do that. All right. So delegated access is a big topic, and it's certainly something that you may find yourself needing to leverage. I encourage you to just play with it, see the differences between running elevated access with a super privileged user like an admin and without it, and you'll just notice that there's some scenarios that you'll really benefit from. All right, questions.
Yeah, we do have question in the chat, Michael.
Okay. Let's jump to the chat real quick. Okay. Let's see. When doing a migration from non-Sitecore to Sitecore using SPE with the extended security, there's something that Sitecore wants to do that we need to be aware of. Well, so let's say if you're migrating from a non-Sitecore solution to Sitecore, the security wouldn't exist. And so I think at that point you would, as part of the migration, you would first to not only are you deciding the information architecture, but you would also want to determine what kind of security to apply to that architecture. I think you could, as part of the migration, incorporate the security in the procedures of like creating items. You could apply the security. If you're leveraging delegated access, that would be another, or the previous security rule module that I've described. In both of those scenarios, you would plan up front, okay, well, where would this apply best? Like if I'm wanting to give users these capabilities, we've got a Jira story and it's to give them this access, how could I apply this feature? That would be your first thought. How could I apply this to give them the access before I go and just give them the access on items? Because even that becomes a kind of tedious to manage. You want to leverage roles versus applying security for a given user. There is a tool in SPE for you to convert access from a user into a role. So there's just tons of stuff in SPE that we just don't have time to talk about, but it could be a full day class for sure. So keeping the script with, let's see, maybe there's 100 unique modules, keep bunch script. Yeah, so anytime you are developing scripts, you want to organize it into a script module. So like with SPE, we have a SPE script module that is, there's a field on it. There's a field on not these folders, but on these that have the little, I think it's a coffee bean. Make sure these are activated anytime you create them. Otherwise, certain integrations don't work. But if you're organizing in a structure like this, then it makes it much easier for you to serialize it. And it also would be convenient if you were creating like these modules, maybe per team or sets of features. In our case, in production, we have a separate one called ad hoc, and that's for all the ad hoc reports that we create. That we don't really need it to go through QA when it's like I put the report together in like 5 minutes and it's read only. I don't need to go through QA and a deployment just to get into production. So I author it directly into production because I'm just querying data. And if it turns into be something we wanted as part of like a core feature that we want deployed, then you could migrate it from the ad hoc reports or ad hoc whatever into your serialized reports developed locally. Hopefully that answers the question. Yeah. Any other things? I think we'll hand it off to the next presenter.
Yeah, Andreas, you can take it up now.
And just to let you know, you're still muted.
You're muted. Hello? Andreas, you're muted.
Sorry.
No
Yeah.
problem.
Haven't unmuted.
Yeah, we hear you now.
So then let's start with my presentation. So I want to talk about Sitecore CDP. It was a sales use case, and yeah, some things we learned during the implementation of the CDP. Little question in between. Have you some experience with the CDP? Someone here? Or are all new to the topic of CDP? Yeah,
I've just had Sitecore demos. Yeah, just Sitecore demos.
Only demos. Okay. So then I have to say some additional words in between. So what I want to talk about is a few words about the environment, the requirements of the customer, then about the problems, the solution, the methods we used, and yeah, what happened finally. So I call it the happening. Yeah, the environment. It happened for a customer. It's called Blickle. They make wheels and castors. They are one of the 5 biggest companies in the manufacturing these wheels and castors. It's owner managed company, founded 1953. So yeah, a world leader in his niche. They have round about 1,300 employees, 300 million revenue. So nothing new here. It's all open data you can find in the web for the company, but it's let's say a bit important to know which kind of company this is. So the challenges of the business of the company, it's a little bit special. First of all, they have a complete decentrally stored customer data. So they have many systems where they have stored customer data. So the CRM, I didn't know exactly which system, the ERP system, it's a SAP. Then some special smaller systems, especially for lead generation, for in-person meetings and stuff like this. So everything completely in silos over the different divisions. They have no system with a data sovereignty, so everything it's really a mess where they have stored customer data. The next thing is they have let's say relatively complex sales structure in the company. They have the classical persons on the street. We call them the persons on the street. They are traveling to the bigger customers and meet in person there. And these data they have from there, they're not stored in the CRM, but in not every use case. So it depends on the seller of the SDR if he uses the CRM or not. Then they have approximately 25,000 products. So it's such a broad customer landscape from the small craftsman, which is more interested in designer wheels for furniture or stuff like this, up to big enterprise companies like Continental, they make customers for wheels for So this structure is really hard to build in one system. And this also leads to a very complex pricing and price structure within their products. They have individual discounts. They have price lists for individual companies. So there's nothing like a basic price for a product. So yeah, that's pretty hard to bundle in a product like a shop. And yeah, good to know is they have a website. They have a website for 34 countries and languages, and additional versions of languages like Switzerland. In Switzerland, you have 3 languages in one country, so this is pretty hard to manage. This is a bit of the challenges we meet so far. No problem for stuff like the website. Now we have got the requirements. One time we meet on a regular base. They told us we want to start with personalization. We were really appreciate these decisions and say, yeah, let's go start with personalization. Right now they had, to this point we talk about, they had Sitecore DXP, the on-prem version with XP 9.2. Right now we are updating to 10.31. Whatever, we had also a shop e-commerce there in place. We are using UCommerce for this installation. ERP and CRM are SAP based, and product management is in River. And the fragmented customer view, their data stored in the SAP, in the CRM, in Sitecore Send. In Candenas, it's a parts management tool. In user-like chat, then in a My Stand Lead is a trade fair contract tool for lead management from fairies and stuff, and conferences, and the tool Wired Minds. So this to know, and this you have to keep in mind when they told us we want to start with personalization. So we after this we checked for the DXP license. After that we figured out they have XP features not really used until now. The decentralized user data. They have isolated customer views and physical touch points. The goals they told us is start personalization, using, then improving the conversion rates of the shop, cracking the data silos, centralize view of the customer data, and connecting all these touch points. So far, so good. Sounds not that special for typically companies like this, customer owned and from the size. So the problem, they had a pretty old license from Sitecore XP. So we figured out they haven't an XDB license included, and they haven't EXM license included on, right now. They use Matomo for tracking. So no XDB and no EXM required until now. Yeah, as a result of this, even if Sitecore XP is licensed and in use, the personalization request leads to immense costs because we had to expand the license to get XDB and EXM in place, which we have to use for the personalization in the classical XP. So sounds good to me so far. The solution I mentioned is solve the problem and don't use EXM, don't use XDB. We mentioned have a look at Sitecore CDP and personalize. So we are cracking the silos and placing Sitecore CDP as a central customer data place in this case. And you see right now, Sitecore, the vision was to place the CDP in the center and having a data exchange with the CRM. The ERP still has a connection to CRM, which sends the data also to the CDP. So no double data is sent, and exchanged data also with Sitecore Send, including the physical touch points, and then building the segments in Sitecore CDP and use Sitecore Personalize. Though this is much cheaper than licensing the EXM and the XDB. So instead of this new installation with Sitecore XM, so no more XP, Sitecore XM 10.2, replacing the existing newsletter with Sitecore Send, introducing the CDP, and the central point is to centralize the customer data from the different systems, introducing the segmentation of the CDP, and also the introduction of the physical touch points to the CDP. Next steps after implementing, introducing the CDP, from our perspective, we're collecting user data and then introducing personalize and still work with the collected data. So far, so good. The method, we started with a kickoff, classical project flow. We had a meeting to clarify the terms. So we clarify the procedure and goals. After that, we had expert interviews. We made an inventory data. We getting agreement of the touch points we include in the CDP. We query each of the experts of their individual pain points from which they have with the customer data and a view of the data. After that, we had workshops to reflect and commit on the customer life cycle and touch points, and we outlined the first use cases. After that, we had first of all analytics and processing the tracking concept. So we made an analysis of the collected data. We clarified the definition of the possible KPIs, and after all, we told them what dashboarding is there and what's not. In parallel, we started to prepare the first use case elaboration, so preparation of the first use cases, and we elaborate the the technical solutions for them. So you see the start of the iterative optimization process starts parallel to the implementation of the CDP and the tracking strategy. So in the phase one, you see we have made the CDP setup and the analyze workshops. The output of the analysis workshops going to the CDP adjustments and improvements and building the use case. And after that, we end in a continuous optimization cycle. So far, so good. Then the reality takes in. So clarify questions, processing events, and all these stuff takes place. In the phase two, the definition of the tracking and this stuff all takes place, and we had nearly the same cycle which Sitecore told us what is the best case. One of the biggest problem was the company's processes weren't there where they have to be. So we had to put in this cycle a phase of let's say company consulting part. So we had to bring some of the processes to a state where it's possible to digitalize the processes. So this takes, let's say, a bigger effort and bigger amount of time to bring all the processes there, and it's also very hard thing to tell such an let's say old school managed company to tell them, hey, you have to adjust your processes to fit the digital needs. So we have to digitalize some of your processes, and you have to get the support of the people working there, also of the, let's say, older people in some cases working there. They are not really willing to move into more digital world. So this is a, let's say, a bigger struggle. So I can only recommend always keep in touch with all people and involve them in a very early state, that you have their support when you have to make adjustments in the let's say older processes of these companies. Yeah, after that something happens. So I said the happening. It was one early Wednesday morning, and they told us, you said it's composable. So yeah, it's composable. So let's start with CDP, and when the system is live and running, we go ahead with Sitecore Personalize. So this is the first thing I definitely cannot recommend. On the one side is you have to go in a, let's say, nearly second sales life cycle if you only sell one of CDP and Personalize and not sell them as a bundle. It's always the same. Customer want to move it to a later time slot, the implementation, and then you have to fight to get there. You also CDP without Personalize does not make that much sense to be honest. So you can use the segments in other tools, also like Sitecore Send, or if they have omni-channel possibilities, you can use it there. But to be honest, without a personalization tools, it makes no sense because you have no output there. And you can implement CDP first without personalize, but this leads to additional costs. So not only regarding the licensing, also for the implementation of the events. So you have to implement the events of the CDP in another way when you use personalize compared to when you only use a tracking tool like Matomo or Google Analytics or stuff like this. So after that, it's another, let's say, big sales slogan from Sitecore, which is not that 100%. How can we track XY with CDP? So no, you can't track with you can't track anything with CDP. CDP is not an analytics. CDP is only a data pool. So there's always a common mistake. So Sitecore tells you in some of their brochures, you get rid of third-party tools and third-party data with CDP, but that's not completely correct. So if you use Google Analytics or Matomo or anything else outside of the Sitecore universe for analytics proposals, you can't get rid of this third-party stuff. So this is not 100% correct, and it's always very hard to explain to customers that you still have third-party cookies in place. The next question or the next sentence was, we want to see an XY overview of the tracked data in CDP. Be aware of this request. The Sitecore CDP has nearly no dashboarding and not the capability of individual views or dashboards. They have some standard dashboards in Sitecore CDP, but you can't extend the dashboards, and it's quite tricky to generate new dashboards. So the easiest way how we solve this problem is we bought an AWS space because the CDP is running on AWS, a disk space. Then we're running from time to time, so once a day, an data export of the CDP to this data lake. So getting this file, and after that we have created a Power BI dashboards where we read in these Parquet file from the CDP, and on top of these imported Parquet file in the Power BI, we created some individual dashboards with individual data views, and this was a really tricky and hard way to learn on the CDP. So the communication there is quite hard, and from what Sitecore tells what's possible and what is really possible, if you let's say move 1 centimeter to the left or to the right from these things. What I have mentioned to Rich Carroll from Sitecore is, don't know where are you all working in what kind of companies. So especially for agencies, it's quite hard to move from the classical web or CMS or DXP stuff to such tools like CDP. It's, from my perspective, an tick harder than to implement a digital asset management, because it's not a classical agency, or it's not a classical programmer's task. You need data scientists for this stuff, and the way you manage such projects is it's another way you have to handle the stuff, and other things you have to do. You need other roles and other peoples than for DXP or CMS implementations. So I know some agencies and companies, Sitecore partners, which are really struggle in the task to implement and really support an use of the use cases of a CDP. So in a conclusion, I can take care of customer expectations and take care of a common understanding what is a CDP and what is not, and be aware of scope switches. Otherwise, you can only fail. And this is one of the biggest failure or biggest mistakes we made in this project. We weren't aware, and we missed the right point where they have told us we want to track XY and we want to have dashboard XY in the CDP, because this were the right point to tell, stop here. We have to do a reevaluation of the tool. You started with the scope of we want to start using personalization, but that's not personalization anymore. You don't want to personalize. You want to do analytic dashboarding and data analysis, not personalization anymore. And that's the point we failed to warn the customer and stop the project and make a break. So, and that's what we learned, and I want to tell you, didn't understand, sent me in a false way. The CDP is a absolutely great tool, also together with the personalize. In my point of view, you only can sell the bundle, so it's not recommended to sell only one of the tools. If you want to use both together, it's absolutely amazing and great what you can solve with, but be aware of this stuff. So that was from my side. If you have questions,
Yeah, I've
feel free to ask.
got a couple questions. So I think in some of the demos that we've had with Sitecore regarding XM Cloud, they've described some degree of personalization possible in XM Cloud. When it comes to the use of CDP and personalized, so like the separate products, are you finding that you're needing to develop like a matrix of degrees of personalization and data collection and sort of like a picture that you're showing the customer? Okay, if you want to do this, this is what product you need to buy. Okay, if you need to do this, okay, this is the other product that you need to buy. Are you finding that you're having to do that with every customer?
We have done this. We also had demos from Sitecore. So the demos are let's say hand tailored from Sitecore for this customer, and we also had a technical advisory guy which support us during the implementation. But the problem was not a technical problem. It was more a problem from a common understanding and a scope switch. So the first thing they asked for was, we want to use personalization. And the truth is, they haven't licensed XDB and they haven't licensed the EXM, and this is more expensive than the than CDP and personalize, and so it's the right decision for this requirement. But if the requirement changes in a direction of we want to have XYZ dashboard and we want to have an analytics in place and stuff like that, then it's the wrong tool. So I didn't know even one tool which solved this in these whole requirements.
Yeah.
So that's what they didn't understand, and yeah.
In the demo calls that I've had with Sitecore regarding personalization, you know, it starts off of, okay, well, you need personalized to do the basic personalization on the site, and CDP comes into play when you, let's say you're working with your CRM, or you want to retain more data than you are getting with the Sitecore personalized. Are you finding that there's like these kind of gotchas often with buying the products? That there's like little, like you have a list of things that you think you're going to get with personalized, and then you go, oh, but you need CDP to do this other things. I think you commented that in one of your slides was, you know, maybe you think through all of these things ahead of time and incorporate that in your licensing agreement rather than having to go back and renegotiate.
Sorry, I didn't understand you right, I think.
Yeah, so I'll just rephrase the question. So you've discussed quite a deal about the CDP and you know what it is and what it isn't. In cases like with Sitecore Personalize, I assume you're doing the same kind of conversation, like what that does get you out of the box, what it doesn't get you out of the box,
Yes.
and where you have to maybe build something to accommodate. Okay.
It's for me, so it's always a demonstration of CDP with personalized. So it doesn't make that much sense to doing separate demos of these both tools in my perspective. So maybe if they have something like an Adobe personalization or an Salesforce, maybe Salesforce personalization from the Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So maybe then they can use CDP as a single application. But I think that's not very common.
Yeah.
I think most of the companies, when you talk about XM Cloud, in XM Cloud you have the basic personalization on board. So personalization in the direction of from which region of the world does he access to the site, or the first party cookie based personalization. So from the session he has actual, you can personalize pretty much with the basic personalization of XM Cloud. So that's a good start, but you haven't something like this in the classical XP world.
Yeah. Just one last thing is in the company I work for, the industry that I'm in, healthcare, we're beginning to see more challenges with like, to what degree can you personalize and be allowed to personalize? Like, what data are you capturing, and is that data you can capture? And so, if we were saying, okay, 10 years ago, we want to personalize anything and everything we know about the customer, and now we're thinking, well, can we even know this? Like, can we even record this piece of detail about the customer? And so I'm curious what that will mean for these types of products, personalized in CDP. What would that mean long term? Where in healthcare industries, there's a greater concern for what's being captured to begin with, and so it's like now we're constantly going back and forth between, okay, we get this product, can we capture what it's capturing? And if it's capturing something we can't capture, then what do we do? It is can the product not capture that data? It's a interesting dilemma. I think California, the United States, has had various laws come into play that have further complicate, what you can capture. I think recently we've had discussions around um, people can request what information about them is captured,
Yes, same
and
in Europe.
companies then have to produce that. And so uh talks about having dashboards. It's like reports are critical. Like, how do we know the person who's emailing us? How do we know who they are in the data that we have in our system? It's something that will, I think, continue to grow as a concern.
Yes, in general, in the CDP, there are two kinds of users which you can personalize. So the one type of users are the known users. They have an email and maybe from a login or something like this, or from a newsletter. So these are the known users. That's pretty easy to wipe the data out of the CDP. Uh, to be honest, in Europe, you can request the data they have collected from you. So it's possible. I haven't heard from that anyone have already requested this data, but it's possible. And the next thing is you can write an email to a company and you can tell them you have to wipe out any data from me out of your systems, and then you have to do this. And this have to be possible in any way. So this is possible for known users, but there are still data from not identified users. So they are still known users. You have a footprint of the system they use, the browser they use, if they were already on the website and stuff like this. So they are also maybe known users, but they are, let's say, anonymized. And you can also use personalization on these anonymized users. And the next thing is that's right now it's more and more common that personalization isn't standard also in the B2B market, because expectations were of each person were built mostly in the private environment. So every person orders stuff from Amazon and companies like that, and there they make experiences, and they have the same expectations to B2B companies. So also in the business in the business, you have to use personalization to fit these expectations.
A problem to solve another day.
Yes,
It's what keeps
definitely.
us employed, is these kinds of problems. I was thinking, you're sitting down, you're looking at your phone, and you have a thought, and then all of a sudden you start seeing targeted ads for that kind of thing. Like that's where we're going. We're going to a point where like the personalization just knows what you want, and yeah, it'll be interesting. Maybe we'll have, you know, Google Glasses, you know, like Google used to have Google Glasses. Will there be the Apple version of that? And then it'll just know what you want, and that the personalization will be significantly better than we get today. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the predictive stuff is so the stuff coming next. So
Yeah.
predictive support, predictive orders and stuff like this. So Amazon tells you when you're maybe your cleaning tabs for the dishwasher is going empty before you know it.
Yes. We've approximated you wash 1 load of dishes a day, so you,
Yeah.
Andrew,
Yeah.
Sitecore CDP also have custom privilege to extend the machine learning algorithm and deep learning algorithms to predict the data currently. So any customization we can able to do?
The
Not sure.
CDP has an interface for in standard for Google ML and the Azure AI. So you can interact with these. So the segmentation building is based on depends on what you choose. Google machine learning or the Azure AI. So you also can implement other AI frameworks for the segmentation, but that's it. What's existing out of the box.
Yeah, actually, in terms of personalization, my experience with XM Cloud, actually we are trying to utilize XM Cloud also have certain level of personalization, but somehow it is not working properly. We being this new XM Cloud and teams are started working and implementing various features. So we see challenges implementing out-of-box personalization which XM Cloud offers. So that's why we are looking like whether the same kind of strategies will work for XM Cloud also. If you're using Sitecore CDP, even though that is a separate license, you have to use if XM Cloud is not started working. We are connecting with engineers from Sitecore product, but still there is no way to implement that personalization with out of box. But CDP limited things we tried, it's supporting and it's showing the personalized content, but also want to research more on what more it will give, like automated way and analytics way, implementing a customized algorithm to get the content to so specific users. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Andreas, for the presentation. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Thank you so much for joining it. Thank you for various wonderful discussions, Andreas and Michael. Thank you so much.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
Yes.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.